Good. I was going to say afternoon, morning, we're somewhere around there, I think. I am limping, yes, and it's not old age. Well, it's a combination of a lot of different things. Running 13 marathons, doing a lot of 100-mile bikers, biking expeditions, the Pan Am, and some of those kind of things. And make a long story short, I'm trying to actually hide my age here. That's what this whole exercise is about. It is very simply, 12 years ago they said you need knee replaced. Being from Boston, actually from Dorchester, so I'm about 7 miles that way and about 4 miles this way where I grew up. And so I'm kind of stubborn. Irish, stubborn, Boston. I mean, it's there. Y'all feel the same way or are that anyways. But, so I said to the doctor, even though you've done a lot of our players, and I know you're very good, I just don't think I'm ready for, I made my own analysis, by the way, for a knee replacement. So I said I'm going to stop running, get on the bike. I did that, and then on the bike one day, I was slowed down to about 15 miles an hour, went around the corner, and I had those real good clips in my bike to make me go about an average of 19 miles an hour on the 100-mile race, and I went around the corner, the sand got me, got that clip out. This clip didn't seem to work, and I broke my hip. I actually broke my thigh bone. Therefore, the knee went, and the lung. I know you really don't care about this, but I care. I need the excuse to tell you why I limped up here. So that's the most important thing. So I'll feel better. You may not even care, as I said before, and I truly understand that. So we'll get that fixed next Tuesday. Next Tuesday, I'm right now at the point, if they want to get me tomorrow or this afternoon, cut me, do it. Just do it so I can get back to doing what I want to do. But I'm really happy to be here. As I said, I am local. The thing that scared me the most, I had not been to, I've been here before. I've been to Granite Lake before. Unfortunately, at that time, or fortunately, this was a quarry. And I was a quarry jumper. And everybody who grew up around here knows exactly what I'm talking about, whether it be Echo Lake, whatever you may call it. I was trying to figure out some of the quarries. I'll tell you a quick story about my two sons that Patrick has talked about. I brought them over to a place called Razzle on Echo Lake. Razzle's about 90 feet high. And I was going to show them where I used to jump. The only problem, as soon as I get close to the edge, my knees start to shake. I used to jump that, and I think a lot of people around this area have done quarry jumping. And it showed at an early age that we weren't very smart. If they ever used that as a criteria for college admissions, they wouldn't have taken us, trust me. But once again, I'm very happy to be here. John is a former Northeastern football player, and he was a freshman with a great player named, he himself was a terrific player, Danny Ross, who won the MVP for the Cincinnati Bengals. And so I was fascinated with John's background. I was fascinated very simply with the idea of what you folks do. And you know, as I read more and more about Thorbahn Company, and what you folks do, a lot of it is not dissimilar from what I've done as a basketball coach, or as an administrator, or as someone who has to deal with people on a particular daily basis. And so my question, first thing, we all have our story. I gave you some of my story, whether you liked it or didn't like it, or wanted it or not, you got it. But we all, and you all, have a story. You got something that makes you distinct, events in your life. The death of my father at 15, having to leave college at 19 to come home, okay, with 7 kids, and being Irish Catholic in Boston, 7 kids was very typical. Actually, we were a rather small family at that point in time. Dorchester was a place that everybody, it seems, from Ireland that came over was there. But the events of my life changed, altered, and made simply kind of who I am. And I really think that a lot of us don't take a great deal of time. I don't take a great deal of time to be so retrospective. I look back on every single event of my life. But I do know the significant events. And I know when you lose your greatest hero, as I did my dad at 15, that I had to do something. And being the oldest son, I had 2 older sisters, but being the oldest son, obviously, I came home from a baseball game. They told me my dad was dead, and I turned to my mother and I said, "I'll take care of you." I had no idea what that meant. But some of the aspects that later would show me as captain of my high school team, captain of my college team, things of leadership things of taking charge, whether I knew or didn't know, became incredibly important. And the reason I say this is because y'all, every one of you, has a story. You have something that differentiates you from others. And also things that bond you to so many others. And in the position of what you do, which is a phenomenal field, people. In one word, people. What you do on a daily basis is deal with people and their stories, their present stories, where they're going, what they're doing. So my first question for most folks is, how'd you feel at 5:30 this morning? Were you excited? Now, I've done this a few times. I've actually spoken once or twice before. You may ask the question afterwards, to who? But point being, how'd you feel this morning? Were you excited? Were you excited about getting up this morning and obtaining new information? Were you excited about this morning of integrating yourself with other people, with different ideas, other ways to do things? Because if you weren't, you're missing out on a very important thing. That every day is an important day. I think that when I left college, I was drafted by the Celtics, and then this foolish coach named Bill Russell, one of the great players of all time, tapped me on the shoulder. We were down to 14, and kept this guy who became later a very good friend of mine, John Havlicek. What happened to him, by the way? Did he make out okay? Because I always worried about John being kept by the Celtics. John actually became a very good friend because one of my sons was Knowles and Greeno, and John's son was going afterwards. And John was all worried that his son would become, I think the word preppy was thrown around someplace. But my point being is that if you aren't excited, if you don't wake up in the morning ready to kind of make that day special, I call it everyday victories. Do you have everyday victories? Do you make notations of them? You make notations of the people who work with you. You make sure that everybody's aware of what we kind of did today. I mean, it's critical. It is a critical mass of everything that we do. And I would take time as a head coach, and the joke I make a little bit is because of what happened to me, I got cut, went back to graduate school, started working, never thinking I'd be a coach. But there is a correlation of what happens to you makes your story. My story is kind of simple. And growing up in a town right here, Braintree, Massachusetts, when my dad died, went to school, mom needed help, she had a heart condition, came home and worked. My town, my high school basketball coach, and many people in that town made sure I didn't stay around. They said, you all can relate to this to some degree. A lot of the guys and people that you hang around, they'll want you to stay. Because if you leave, they're less successful. Think about that sometimes. Who you hang around, who you decide to have coffee with. So I'm talking as we go up in age, the same kind of thing happens. And very simply, that town, those people, my family, my sisters particularly, and my brother was only 5 at the time, joke around Yukon is that he's around as a cardiologist just to make sure that I won't have the big one during a game. But my point being is that we all made it through, things happened to us. But when I get cut by the Celtics, I'm in grad school trying to find out what I want to do for the rest of my life. Well, to pay for that grad school, I became a grad assistant. And as I put that whistle around my neck, I don't think it's going to work. I can't shoot the ball. I can't compete. I can't compete. Well, I found out you can compete a great deal. I remember with a kid that played with me. He was only a year or two younger than me, and I started working with him. And I started to realize all of a sudden that just like my high school coach, just like my town, I can make a difference. I can help alter, maybe in a very small and very large sort of way, someone else's life. And coaching gave me that vehicle to do that. And I think that in everyday life, if you can't help, then you don't belong. If you can't assist, then you don't belong. If you don't think this is the best company, and if you're a customer and don't think it's the best company, you don't need to be here. And you know what? Because it all starts for John, for Patrick, for this whole organization, for all you people here as clients. Every bit of your success, and I can take this from personal circumstance, personal career, starts with you. You know, whatever you think you are, you're probably right. Whatever you think you are, you're probably right. You see this kid who played for the Celtics for a few years, who's going to the Hall of Fame, Ray Allen. The number one thing I had to be convinced Ray of is how good he was. Now, I had some different words and things at times to express that, but to how darn good he was. And so, whatever he thought he was, he eventually became. The joke I have about Ray, and a lot of folks, and Ray is 37 years old now. And all the 37-year-old people I do know, he's the only guy that in shirts and skins could still play skins. I think a lot of us guys understand that, particularly because that's how we all play basketball. But I have another thing I think about, and I always, by the way, I have cards like this, and my secretary says, well, I'll do the, no. I started doing this by watching games on TV. And so we're going to play Duke eventually, and eventually we're going to play for a national championship, and I have a whole set of cards. So I always have done this for the past 25, 30 years, just because I like to have things down quantitatively, because in our everyday daily life, we get inundated with so many facts, knowledge. But I have little things or observations that I have. Another thing I have is that sometimes be tall, short, old, young, whatever the case, don't let others define you. No, you define yourself. One of the reasons I think I've been fortunate enough to have a lot of success in basketball, or coaching, or leading people, or changing lives, or whatever the case may be, is I tell them, don't let other folks define you. No, you define yourself. One of the great ways to success is make sure you have internal barometers. If you work in the public sector, as I did for 40 years, you'll find that everybody on the ESPN wants to define you. Boston Globe wants to define you. Your fellow employees want to define you. People who are employed by you want to define you. No. You define who you are. And that takes some, once again, looks inside yourself to see how really special you are. Because every one of you is special. Every one of you, as I said before, have a story to tell. Sometimes, though, you have a tough time getting that story out. But if you define who you are and what you are by what you do, you'll define yourself. That I promise you. You'll define yourself. It doesn't always come out pretty. In my case, I can tell you a few times, it wasn't necessarily as pretty as I'd like, but, you know, like a Sinatra thing, I kind of did it my way. If I did it by best intentions always, not necessarily best results, I define myself. Make sure you define yourself. Who are you? And what do you do? And what do you want to do? It's captivating to have that. That, in many, many ways, is going to excite you to believe in who you are and what you can do. And by the way, the confidence it will build, to me at least, is absolutely incredible. Another thing I've found out in life, and it's funny because we now have a new coach. He's doing a great job at UConn. Kevin All, he played 13 years in the league, was one of my former players. And yet, you know, he's running things, which is good. Different than maybe I would have run things. But I try to tell him one thing that I always have said. And it kind of gets back to defining yourself, but life is a do-it-to-yourself proposition. Because we can do, as human beings, we have a great ability to help ourselves. We also have this other side of us to screw ourselves, to hurt ourselves. Think about it. And sometimes lack of confidence, lack of knowing and defining who you are. But we have this great ability to do that. And I would carefully say to you, and very honestly say to you, life is a do-it-to-yourself proposition. I hear so many people complain. You know, when I see a problem or an obstacle, it's a challenge. I mean, to sit around and complain about what's not happening, tell me what really good that does. That's why I never try to do blame. I try to find reasons for things happening. That will help you a great deal, trust me. If you just find blame, you may spend the rest of your life complaining about what's not happening as opposed to doing something about what's not happening. Or make it happen. Confidence is contagious. Put that down because that's something I feel very, very strongly about. I have spent 40 years going back to my days with, God rest his soul, Reggie Lewis, who played for the Celtics, was a great young player, died of a heart attack, and so many other kids. And by the way, just from a basketball standpoint, this is a paid political announcement for UConn. This year, in the past 24 years at UConn, I get told by a lot of professors, these kids have to finish school. And I said, I agree. Sometime they have to finish school. Where if they go early? Well, it's just wrong. So what's wrong about it? You're here. We only had one kid ever go one and done. Everybody else 2, 3 years. But when they went, our team, over the past 24 years, have collectively made $1 billion. That's 30 players in the NBA. You can do the math and see that they did okay. And the reason I throw that figure out, if getting a good job is a criteria of a university, I think, and the average salary for our kids, by the way, is about $8 million a year. That's a good job. Maybe not here, maybe folks get paid a lot more, maybe in the wrong audience, but I think that's a hell of a job if you're getting paid $8 million a year. Our players, unlike the average NBA player, who lasts 4 years, last 8 years. So the structure, standards that we set up carries them on into the rest of their life. I talked before about everyday victories. I hope that when you leave here today that you have a couple everyday victories. A couple things that you either picked up, someone that you know associated with, did good things to make it exciting for you. It's so important to understand that. I can tell you that where you are right now and where you're going to be will happen awful quick. That's my experience. I start recruiting players who I coached against, sons. It will go by awful quick. So if you don't take advantage of the great things, good things, things that you make happen to you, you're making a mistake. By the way, I don't know how it applies here, but I've always felt this. You know, when I used to go to clinics, do clinics, just basketball clinics or other type of clinics, I always try to get really good people. And I had a great theory about that. That when I went to a meeting, if I found myself, I thought I found myself, as the smartest person in the room, I probably was in the wrong room. If you find yourself always being the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. Because you need to go grow every single day. So if you find yourself in that room, and there's nothing greatly challenging to you, you're in the wrong room. You've got to find people that stimulate you. I love, well, my other people, my assistants will say this, and people who've been around me say this. I love asking questions, particularly the ones I know the answer to. Particularly the ones I know the answer to. Because you know what? It takes strength to ask questions. And when you ask them, you might not always get the response you want. And all of a sudden, seeds of doubt come in that, quote, well thought out decision. So you're going to have to now regroup and have a plan B. And it's the greatest thing I can do. My assistants said for me for years that I always put them on edge. I don't mean edge in the sense of it, but if I asked you a question, I expected an answer. I'd like it to correlate exactly to what I'm thinking. But if it didn't, then I had reason or pause to think of why it didn't. And I might just say, excuse me, but that's a goddamn bad idea. An hour later, thought even more about it, and it was actually destroyed a little bit of what I was thinking of. Or many times, the great thing will reaffirm what I'm thinking about things. So, you know, it becomes so important. Teamwork. Well, you know, I spent my life as an educator, teacher, someone I think that I should give you kind of an overview. I started to hint a little bit on it, but an overview of what I truly felt after 40 years of coaching. First thing, I was Division I head coach at 28 at Northeastern. And at that time, I thought I did have all the answers. By the time I finished 40 years later, I had a ton of questions. And I think that's what you develop. And point being, I always say, why were you a head coach? Only a head coach for that period of time. I was a graduate assistant for 2 years, head coach in high school for a couple of years. But why did you, you know, I had that whole career of only being a head coach. No one else would hire me. That's why I felt. But more importantly, I always kind of wanted to run my own ship. I wanted, matter of fact, I'll tell you what more important. I wanted to be in charge of my own destiny. You can be in charge within a group of your own destiny. You can be in charge of that destiny if you don't try to be in charge of your own destiny. Just be affirmative, how you feel and what you think. And that's where teamwork comes into play. The greatest misuse of talent comes in teams, in companies, in groups. The greatest misuse of talent. Do you know how many talented people that are sitting beside you right now? So many people that can help you and help you every single day. Life becomes so much more prosperous, so much better. But if you don't utilize them, you're making a terrible, terrible mistake. If you went to UConn, and once again, we use a very small microcosm, but our basketball program has 5 coaches, trainer, 18 managers, I mean, a lot of different things, okay? Everybody has to at least buy in to what we're trying to do in some form or other. Everybody must contribute. Everyday victories, I had a kid the other day who's now become an assistant coach. You know, not much a kid anymore, he's 32 years old. But what he said to me very simply is, Coach, you know, I would have been a really good scorer, but somehow or other you convinced me that I was the greatest defensive player in the country. He's a great athlete. And we won a national championship with him. And I was saying to him, yeah, there's an important reason for that. I had 2 pros, 2 guys who went to the NBA, who we needed to score. So we need to convince you, manipulate you, to thinking you were the best defensive player in the country. He said, was I really? I said, I have no idea, but damn it, you believed it, and that was the most important thing. And you played the role incredibly well. The tools that each and every one of you have to give to each other are incredibly important and underutilized. We've been fortunate enough, I took my last 6 years at Northeastern, and then my first year we had a losing season at Northeastern, and we had 26 consecutive winning seasons. There's something about people who continue to win that truly understand. Everybody has to be involved. Everybody has to be utilized. You need to understand who's sitting around you. And whether you like them personally as much as you'd like to is not relevant. It really isn't. It's not about a part. It's nice if you like. It's more important that you respect them. You know, love is a lot about, and it doesn't always have to be predicated on the word yes. Matter of fact, love can be a lot of times saying no. I disagree. I don't think that's right. I tell the kids that the kids I recruit, now you know recruiting is a little different. You go in the home, whatever mom says, great. If he wants to score 100 points a game, you'll score 100 points here, whatever you want, that's just fine. When he shows up in September, there's a whole different guy now. You remember the guy that came to your house? He doesn't live here anymore. Now you're going to be told, no. It's amazing to get really good players from high school. I thought at one time, matter of fact, that if I looked in Webster's dictionary, I might find that the word no had been eliminated. Think about it. Think about how many times. Now, you got to find better ways to say, as opposed to just no. You got to find the other ways. But no has nothing to do with caring, liking, loving. It's got to do with the right decision, making it at the right time. So I would tell each and every one of you, I've used every one of my assistants. I have an opportunity going back. I was just thinking about it the other day, how I got to know Bob Knight. I was coaching at Dedham High School. I put 6, 7 kids into my, I think it was Dustin, Plymouth, an old Plymouth, and we'd take them up to, and Bob Knight was a 27, 28 years old head coach at West Point, and I spent the day there at the clinic. I got to know Dean Smith when I first started coaching Northeastern by spending a week down there. Now that was a real sign of weakness. You had to go out and listen to these people. Really. So that was a sign of weakness. To go out and ask some of the best in the business and watch how they do it. No, that's a sign of strength. That I don't have all the answers. And after 40 years, I know I didn't have all the answers, and I was captivated and stimulated by finding answers. And I would hope that every single day you do that. I would encourage you. So much so because I think so many of us hold back. Well, I have nothing to offer. BS, you have a lot to offer. You just choose or haven't been encouraged to offer it. I make my plays. We get together every day to start a practice, and I'll turn and ask you a question. You may not like the question all the time, but I want an answer. And by that I mean I want them to have a forum. Even like, I'm talking about a 10-second forum in front of the most important group they know, their peers. It's a very, very important thing to do. And I would say that you have a say to motivate and stimulate people without even knowing. By a question, by a nod, by inclusion. All those things can make a difference. Teamwork is the essence of productivity. And each and every one of you have got to get a hold of all the various things that you're being offered. You know, I work in the state system. The state systems are a little different. For example, if you do work with us, we'll pay you 6 months later. Okay? If you do 2 things, you need 10 pieces of paper. But conversely, people who understand within that system, or any system that you want to talk about, how to get through it in the most expedient way, are the real geniuses. And I truly mean that. Because you have to go through paperwork too. You have to do things sometimes that are uncomfortable. You say, why do I have to do them? There are reasons. I don't understand them all the time, but there definitely are reasons. And the people who can get through, and then use the great tools you have sitting inside you. Each one of you at your tables right now have incredible tools, incredible people, incredible resources that you need to use on a daily basis. If you aren't doing that, A, you're not doing a great service to your company, certainly not doing a great deal of service to the group, and when it all gets down to it, you're not doing a great service to yourself. I can promise you this, for some of the things I've heard talked to by Dick Vitale and all those other people on TV, I have stolen ideas from the very best coaches in America. I mean, just flat out stolen. And after a while, here's the crazy thing. I think they're my ideas. I mean, I do. I hate to say this. When you're doing something, whatever the task may be, coaching basketball, running human resources, it makes no difference. You have to care more than anybody else. You have to care more than anyone else. And here's what the crazy thing is going to happen about it. With the change in coaches, and trust me, Kevin Ollie is going to be a great coach to coach at UConn, but he doesn't do things quite the same way. I come in, my wife would ask me, why do you have to go in today? I said, I had a great day. I talked to 2 of my players, one for 15, another for 20 minutes, and I planted some seeds. And if you do that 365 days a year, you'll find it actually, it works pretty well. And my point being is that you need to stimulate on an everyday basis the knowledge that you have in the things that you do. And that's where I keep saying the ideas that you have need to be passed on, and they need to be enhanced. And as I said before, once again, they're going to become your ideas. Dare to Dream. I wrote a book before this one called Dare to Dream, and it was right after the national championship. And basically, here's one of the most difficult things I think we all have. Now, I don't go on national television. We were ranked, I think, preseason in my 26 years at UConn, probably preseason #1 7 or 8 times. And people said, what a great deal of pressure. It's not pressure. People actually think we're good. What's wrong with that? Do I want them to rate us? 368 college basketball team. 368? No, I want to be 1. We'll handle the rest of it. Other folks beyond me think we're pretty good. That is not pressure to me. That's praise and motivation. And you know, I've had the fortune, by daring to dream, to say we want to be great. We want to win the title. I want you to be a great player. Dare to dream. And don't be afraid to express that you want something special. Well, they want all this. No, they don't. They want that. And they're willing to admit that. It's hard to admit to the world you want to be great. It's hard to admit to the world because you think it puts responsibility on you. You think it puts pressure on you. My people around me say, we've been in 4 Final Fours. The last one we played in Houston, we were fortunate enough with a kid named Kimball Walker to win the national championship. Before that, there was only 76,000 people at the game. and tens of millions of people throughout the world see it. Next game we played with a small crowd, 56,000, 48,000. Those are great situations. People say, were you nervous? About what? What would you be nervous about? Opportunity to win a national championship? Why would you be nervous? Isn't that why I work so hard for? Isn't that why we as a team work so hard for? Have the courage to say, people, I would like to be special. That's wrong? That's egotistical? No, it's the truth. And by doing so, I promise you this now, you put a little bit of positive motivation, not pressure on yourself. That's a good thing. Trust me, that's a good thing. I truly believe that, and I get put off by people who say, well, you're supposed to be one of the best teams. Well, our kids are all young. We really don't have that good a team. I don't know. What's that all about? I have great kids. You know, if our kids do the things that we're capable of, if we work as hard as the coaching staff and we possibly can, we could be the best team in the country. I have no problem of telling the world that I want to be great. I always think about success. All success is failure turned inside out. All success is failure turned out inside out. I don't think of no of being a stopping place. I think no of being nothing more than another great challenge I have. A great coach once said, as he went through his career, that things went terrific for him. And then a particular period of time, as he got older, long time coaching, 22, 23 years at this particular position, he said, I started to lose why and what made us good, and it reflected on our team. Because I started to avoid going into the office to solve problems. And yet, that's my responsibility. He wasn't running or shooting the basketball, making the passes, playing defense. The job was to go in every day, okay, what do we have to challenge today? What do we have to accomplish today? I can honestly tell you this, when I wake up, and I usually wake up around the same time every day, depending where I'm going, but let's make 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm a night person, okay, so 6 o'clock is about the time I wake up. And I think through a lot of the things I want to get done today. Make it kind of checklist. You say, that sounds obsessive to me. Not a bit. You all do it too. It's just that I want you to express it and take it with you. You know, after the coffee, take it with you. Because like you really did have some great ideas this morning when no one was around. In the shower, just like you really sing well. Don't record it. Let me tell you, just don't record it. It's not a great idea. Life is a motion picture. It's not a snapshot. It's not an iPad, iPod, phone. It's a motion picture. So when you see a situation occur, don't make instant decisions. Don't think all of a sudden, bang, gotcha. No, you don't. What's the next snapshot? Matter of fact, it's ongoing. And I try to tell people, if you don't really know what we're kind of doing here, give us a chance, because this thing's going to keep running. There is a beginning, but the end may be a long ways away. Life is a motion picture, full feature, not a snapshot. And so many of us take snapshots and make judgments, and make, quite frankly, at times, the wrong judgments, based upon what we see instantaneously, as opposed to what we're seeing long-term life. And I tried, my first year we went to UConn, and I think my last 10 years or so in Northeastern, we had a very successful team, we had tremendous players, and we had a losing season. Matter of fact, we lost, even though they had 5 losing seasons before I got there, we lost 1 less game than the year before. And when my captain, a kid named Jerry Besling, who now lives in Finland, married a terrific girl when he was playing professional basketball in Finland, came right at the end of the season, just before he left us, and said, what a great year I had. I really think we made great progress. There was something very apparent at that point in time. Jerry Besling, that was his name, wasn't much of a mathematician. We won 10 the year before, when I wasn't the coach, and 9 my first year. We haven't had a losing season since, so that's where the 26 came. But my point being, we were building a culture of winning. By the way, do you have a culture of winning where you are, what you do, who you work for? You owe yourself that along with everybody else you work with. And that culture is built upon standards, not individual activity. That's things that you believe work. That's things that have shown over a period of time happen, help, and do work. And if you have that, you have a great deal more than instantaneous, well, we had a good year, but we used the wrong kind of kids. We didn't. My first job at UConn, I got rid of 5 players. It doesn't mean, by the way, I go in and I cleaned house. It had nothing to do with that at all. It was kids who didn't belong, socially protected. And so we started a whole brand new culture. And the culture was predicated, when I do exceptionally well, that's good. When we do well, that's great. Because then I will do exceptionally well. You know, no one takes people from programs that are losing. And oh, by the way, most people don't want to take people from programs that go bankrupt. They want to be at the most, they want to take people from the most successful. It's funny when I hear when they're talking about a new professor. I happen to be on the board at the UConn Medical Center. We have something called the Calhoun Cardiology Center up there. But when they talk about a person, they won't say, oh, they went to school X. They say, oh, no, they graduated from Harvard, got their master's degree at MIT, and of course then went on to Penn Medical School. Isn't it true? Don't you hear those type of? Well, people want to be with the people who are successful. And if you don't understand that team concept, and you need everybody on that team. Matter of fact, everybody on that team needs ownership. Everybody's going to buy in. Because when we do well, I do great. I was an English major. It doesn't sound like that. But my point being is everybody wins when we win. And everybody loses when we win. That ownership. I actually make my players, at a meeting, first part of the year, talk about ownership. And I get a small circle, the tip-off circle in basketball, for example. We all have to fit into it. And I make a speech, and I did this for a lot of years. If you want to have 10 toes in to this circle of trust, this circle of doing something very special, then come on board. If you don't, if you want to be an outcast to some degree, outlier, whatever it may be, then don't. But understand that we're going forward anyway, together. And we get 10 toes in, and everything I do, 2 days later, you want to cop a half an attitude when I have to say something tough to you on the court. Oh, by the way, why would you ever yell at a player during a game? I'll tell you why I yell at players. I can't speak for anybody else. I've never grabbed a player, certainly never thrown a basketball at a player. I'm tempted. By the way, that's not a typical picture of me. Here's a picture of me on the sideline. Because you know what, a kid will do something, come right next to you afterwards, and the temptation just is with the children too, right? So this is my pose. This is another good one. Another very, very good one in coaching basketball. Or coaching anything emotional, I should say. But the point being is that the reason that I get on players during the game, and I want you to think about this a little bit when you see coaches yell. And some of them are yelling the wrong thing. But I'm talking about, I've never said a personal, I've called them, excuse me, but a lazy bastard. I think that's okay. But that's not describing them physically. I've heard coaches say things to kids they shouldn't say. Don't ever make it personal. Make it basketball. It's a bad shot. Matter of fact, excuse me, it's a bad goddamn shot is what it is. I could keep going, but it's not good. Go too early one to go that far. But point being is that's a different kind of element. We never do a personalized thing. But here's the problem I had young. When I go on a player, during the midst of a game, my high school coach actually did this to me, who I love, and really helped me so much during my life and helped me turn to see I was hoping making a difference. He got on me a lot, but it's always about me getting better. And here's what he told me, and it stuck. He said that during the midst of a competition of a basketball game, if you get on a player, positive or negative, it's over like that. Play on, next play, right? If you don't get on a player, then you're allowing him, her, to do something that's not going to help us win long-term. So if you, funny way to say it, point out a mistake, that's a nice way to say it, but freeze the moment is a better way to say it. Because when you get in the locker room after the game, obviously it's a good win, we played well, you say good things. How about it's a loss? Am I then going to tell you what you didn't do in the game to put the loss on you? Or you? Can't do that. And if it's a win, they forget about those mistakes anyway. So I try to freeze the moment. And I always say, by the way, as soon as I say something, at times very tough for them. Next play. But I want to freeze that moment so they have an understanding. I can't talk to a guy after the game and blame a loss on him or let him be the only credit for the win. And I just think you got to think about that sometimes. I know in parenting, we like to freeze the moment very quickly. I tell you one thing. I coach 1,300 college basketball games. I have 6 grandkids, 5 girls. Yes, they all have it. It's a joke. It's an absolute joke. But I tell you one thing. 1,300 games. I called a lot of timeouts, but I never had a timeout. These kids get timeouts. My dad did not give me timeouts. You're not going to do this? It's directed. My dad put his hands on me once. Once. I was being a kid, and he just took me, and he was 6'3", 190 pounds, and he threw me up the stairs. I didn't touch a step. So, not a step. 12 steps there. And people ask me, why did I love my dad so much, and why did the fact he didn't have to use anything? Here's what we all want in an ideal world. Here's what I want for my players. I don't really care if you like me. I don't care if you're my friend. That'll develop later. I care if you respect me. Here's what I didn't want to do with my dad. I didn't want to disappoint him. I didn't want to disappoint him. If he said no, he meant no. But I didn't want to disappoint him. If I've had players afterwards say that to me, and that they can't understand what great things they're saying to me when they say that. I didn't want to disappoint him because the one thing I can be very tough, and they've written all kinds of articles, Sports Illustrated, elsewhere, that it's tough love. It is love, and it is tough. But here's the other thing, whether you're in a group, a company, as an individual, a parent, coach, whatever it may be. If you're going to demand a great deal, if you're going to have tough love, you've got to have their back. And you've got to work at that. Because all of you have been told by your children particularly how you embarrass them. I know that. My kids did too. My granddaughters don't because I don't. They do whatever they want. That's just the way it is. I've accepted that. But then, I get them candy and ice cream, and if they get sick, I'm gone. I'm paying my 2 kids back for everything that happened with them. I know I deviate, I'm sorry. But just very simply, I do think the idea of respect, I want to be liked. If you're respected, you eventually will be liked. Okay, if you're liked, you won't be automatically respected. You need to think about that. You need to think about that. I did this, 365 for 40 years. And I was successful at what I did because I had great players who bought into what I was selling. Just a little more on teamwork. Use every tool you have. Asking is a strength, not a weakness. Having everyone take ownership, we talked about that. Everyone should know their importance. I make a point, for example, on a given day, one of our players who hasn't been playing as much time recently, but in that little grouping we have every 2 minutes to start every single practice, I say, but I want you to know, this guy's a senior, this gal's a senior, and they have busted their butt every single damn day on this court. Y'all need to understand, one of the reasons we're on a 6-game win streak is because what they do during the 2-3 hours we practice, not necessarily during the games. Now go on. You know how much that means? You know how much that means. I hope you do, because the words may be different, but the sentiment should be the same, no matter what group setting you're in, no matter who you're working with, for, at the particular point in time. People, a good friend of mine is a guy named Chris Dodd. Chris Dodd was a senator from Connecticut for, I think, 30 years. I asked him what the single most important words he said. Well, he said, for most people, it's their first and last name. For most people, the most important words for them are their first and last name. Make sure you say it correctly. Because everybody, in our own way, it doesn't have to be a celebration, you don't need fireworks, wants to be recognized. Everybody wants to be recognized. And if I'm killing myself on a single given day, I don't expect you to bring a band out. I don't expect cheerleaders. But damn it, I expect someone's recognizing what I'm doing. I work every day, and I worked every day. I want everybody to know how special my administrative assistant, our secretaries are, our trainer is. And I'll take occasion. I just took my administrative assistant. We had something down at Dick Vitale. I was honored with the Jimmy B Foundation Award this year. 800 people in Sarasota, 3 days. It was a wonderful event. They raised $2 million in one day. And I had to get your sister and fly down. She said, I can't do that. Lucy, what part can't you do? Take the ticket, take the hotel room, fly down. My wife and I went there. We're happy to do that. All I was saying to her, in a whole different sort of way, thanks. Thanks for not looking at the clock at 4:30. Thanks for helping. Thanks for when I call you at 6 o'clock at night saying, now what was that I told you to do? And I think you'll find a great deal more response when you take those everyday victories, those everyday things, in a team aspect or an individual aspect, to let someone know, you're really good and you really help. You won't have any idea of the significance that has to people. I'm telling you, I promise you that. As I said, someone may live in. You got to understand when I'm recruiting. You know what I'm recruiting? UConn? Not because they have a scholarship to Duke. They have a scholarship to North Carolina. Sir, you know who I'm recruiting? Me. That's what I'm selling. I'm selling me. So I've gotten used to, in many, many ways, trying to find ways to have someone understand they can buy my dream. And I can make my dream their dream. Make my dream their dream. Can you do that? Y'all can, I'm sure. I'm telling you, if you work at it, you can do that. Make your dream their dream. The thing I want to do most with my players, single most thing, I want them to realize, whatever they thought they could be, they can be a lot more. They can be a lot more than they ever thought they could be. They just have never been pushed that way. I can give you stories about Ray Allen coming in every night, tough practice, classes, etc. And Ray would come in and only shoot 500 jump shots. Charted. The manager would chart every shot. Every single night. And someone says, boy, Ray can really shoot. It's amazing. Must be a really gifted athlete. Really? What about those 30 hours a week when they do extra shooting? And with that, I would say this. It's not about shooting. It's not about a basketball. It's about life. That don't ever mistake, because some people are going to spend a lot of time at the office and doing other things, activity for achievement. Long hours doesn't necessarily equal achievement. You can waste a shitload of time playing. Think about it. You can waste a lot of time. Now, I happen to be a guy that believes that if I talk to 3 players in a given day over a 4-hour period, I've got something done. If I make some phone calls to get things done, I believe that. I truly believe that. But I've seen kids go into our gym, and I'm using these all analogous because they really are analogous to what y'all do. Just think about this, and they'll shoot shots. So I'll walk in and say, how long have you been here? I've been here an hour and a half shooting, coach. No, you haven't. You've got to shoot like the best defensive player in the conference country is playing. You can do that for about a half an hour. And it's the same thing really in the office. So you stayed around a long time, or you're making a lot of phone calls, but what's the essence of those phone calls? What is the message of those phone calls? In recruiting, I always had that idea that if I call you too much, I become a piece of furniture. They get used to it. I want to be special when I say something very nice. That's why you say, well, you must throw a lot of platitudes every day. No. Matter of fact, motivation for me is a lot of different things, and one of the best motivations I have is silence. I'll go 2 or 3 days and not talk to a player. Hoping, fingers crossed, almost always works. Coach, something wrong? No, nothing's wrong at all. Well, you haven't talked to me. Geez, I didn't notice. I'm doing this. They get it. And silence can be one of the great motivators you ever had. Conversely, that makes paying attention much more important. It makes it incredibly more important. Can you give these out if you don't mind? Or maybe you can take them on your way out. I have no idea why ESPN's doing this, but ESPN's doing a documentary on my, quote, tough love thing, my career at UConn and so on. In the process of that, the sayings you'll get, I'll read a couple. Remain humble and hungry. Don't be satisfied with who you are and what you are. Ask for more. This came from players. Things that they heard me say, and they've interviewed, they've done about 10 hours of interviews. And they come up with just some different sayings that kids had said, players had said, that I had said. And I think it's really important that if you, I try to tell people this, a lot of things seem spontaneous, are thought out for 3 or 4 hours. I've gone to great players, for example, and this is, I wouldn't invite this in the office, so I'll closing the deal. But I've gone to a great player and said, Kimber Walker was a great player for us, 5'11", 190 pounds, great kid, cut as a freshman in high school, too small, not good enough, and averaging 18 points a game in the NBA now, help us win that national championship. Kimber, he's such a great kid. I said, Kimber, you don't tell you in practice, I'm going to get on your butt pretty good. Kimber, you're really good. Kimber, I hate to say this, you're too great a kid. And the other guys think I'm just getting on them, and quite frankly, you do everything I ask. And I got to make you part of them. So that day, all of a sudden, I just go off on Kimber. It might be 20 seconds. But I've already told Kimber about that. And my point being, so all those spontaneous things have been thought out for many, many hours. And by that I mean you've got to have a plan. You've got to have an idea as you approach a situation. As you approach it, remember that you've got to have a purpose in mind. That would be very helpful if you had a purpose in mind. Lastly, I've coached, taught for 45 years. And quite frankly, I've had some incredibly difficult days, but never a bad day. And every single day that I was helping to solve a problem, which at that time seemed so big, but then again, it was just nothing more than a Polaroid snapshot. It wasn't a motion picture. That I gave it the very best that I possibly could. I tried to make sure that when I was getting up at 6 in the morning, as I told you, I was in study. I was excited this morning when I drove down from Connecticut. I always said I was coming back home a little bit, so that's kind of cool. South Shore Plaza, the whole deal. You understand that I picked apples in the South Shore Plaza, so I know I'm dating myself, but I think that nothing in life can ever equal enthusiasm. Nothing in life can ever be passion. Sometimes you can't bottle it. You'd like to bottle it and sell it, but you can't. And you can't necessarily always find it. But if each and every one of us, on our daily lives, things we do, making this the best company in the world, we have an obligation. The moment you join us, and whoever us may be, you have a responsibility. I happen to do an awful lot of charity. It's something I wanted to do because of my upbringing to some degree, from Dorchester, to my dad being a Coast Guard Academy graduate, and to being the kind of guy that had the first TV, to 6 years later not having an awful lot with 6 kids, my dad dead, a lot of different things. So I kind of have a different kind of perspective. But I found out through the whole thing, the only thing I could control when all was said and done was me. And if I control me, then I control an awful lot of situations around me. And then I found out not everybody is going to be 6'5", not everybody's going to get a full scholarship to college, then go to grad school, then have a career in coaching doing something they love. So how do I get someone like me who comes back right around the corner here at Setamelli's Monument for a year and a half working shifts? How do I get that young guy, gal, whoever it may be, to help them? And so I work exceptionally hard at that. As I drive away from Autism Speaks, if I drive away from the Calhoun Cardiology Center, if I drive away from all these people, and I approach that the same way. In an 11-year period, this is not doing anything. We've raised over $10 million. And I've done that with a lot of my players every week of the game. We do a food drive. We do a whole bunch of juvenile diabetes walk. I can tell you all the things we do because I would like to be one of those people that passionately wakes up every day and to give someone the same chance that I have. If others hadn't intervened, it does take a village. If someone else hadn't intervened, I have no idea what my life would have happened. But I want to take away that. I want to be the someone. I want you to be the someone to make this the best company, the best job, and you the happiest person. You'll be an incredibly happy person when you reach to help each other. It's my thrill and an honor to be here. John is absolutely an incredible guy. And I really like him. Obviously, I've known the Sockers family for so many years, and just get the opportunity to kind of give you a few things that over a 40-year period have kind of worked for me a little bit, and more importantly, try to share with you some enthusiasm after a fairly long period of time of doing this, and a love for my life, a love for my family. You know, my sisters, my 4 sisters, my brother, we're still all together. Because that's what we had at one point in our life. And I would hope that you take this today and just think what someone else's life is like. And that's one of the reasons I kind of hopefully shared some of those things with you, because I just think it's the essence of life, to wake up every day with purpose. Thank you very, very much.